We probably have the most concentration of people with mental disorders in the county. We definitely house the most people with mental health disorders because there is no psychiatric services in the county. And so we really provide the most day-to-day care for people with mental illness in the county. That's just because we're the last stop. They go to the hospital, they're not sick enough to go to a psychiatric unit, they've done a minor crime, the officer brings them to jail. And we get a lot of that.
My name is Troy Hart, and I am the Operations Director and Office Manager of Chance Recovery here in Newport. I come from a family, I come from a biker family. So the family dynamic, there was a lot of drugs and alcohol involved. My father was killed selling drugs, and my mom, she died on the streets from her drug addiction and alcoholism. So I kind of fell into those footsteps of just accepting that this is just what it is and I'm going to die like this. So my experience with that was I had a lot of unresolved mental health problems from my childhood, a lot of trauma that was not processed, and in order to not feel like that, I drank a lot and used a lot of drugs, which doesn't make for a sustainable lifestyle.
I mean, we see people on their worst days, I guess, and I think that's kind of typical. And it's hard trying to, I mean, you can have all the training in the world and you want to help people, but if they don't want it, I don't know, it's kind of the battle we have.
When I went to jail the first time, it was briefly. I had a hit and run charge and, some minor stuff, and I got out, kept using drugs, went on the run. I ended up in a high-speed police chase, and I got a attempt to elude charge. I had a possession of controlled substance charge and providing false info charge, and all of my charges I've had in the past, I haven't had. They've all been as a result of my drug use and mental health problems.
If we just put that person in jail, what we've learned is we can't arrest ourselves out of this problem. And as I mentioned, people that sit in jail just get worse. And when they get out, what they're going to do is they're going to go back to the habit of choice, or they still have mental illness, and it's worse now, and they're just going to commit further crime. And that's exactly what we don't want.
In the spring of 2016, I was invited to attend a national summit in Washington, D.C., sponsored by the three lead organizations that had launched Stepping Up a year earlier. And it really hadn't been on my radar screen before then, but as I learned about this effort to create a fundamental shift in the way the criminal justice and behavioral health systems approach mental illness, this made so much sense to me. They estimate that nationally, 2 million people or more are behind bars in local jails and state prisons, not primarily because of criminal intent, but because of mental illness and addictions.
Primarily the mental health issues that we see here at the jail predominantly are depression and anxiety. By far, the greater number of inmates have anxiety disorders, including PTSD, trauma, and depression. About 10% of the population has a psychotic disorder. This is a disorder which has a disturbance in their thought process. They may have hallucinations, they may have delusional beliefs, and those are what we would classify as the more severely mentally ill. I'm going to begin with some of the programs that we offer and why they're important to have in a jail. Probably the number one for me is our mindfulness-based stress reduction program. Okay, big long word. It's teaching mindfulness to people who have traumatic pasts, who have been traumatized by a system, giving them ways to cope with and learn how to live within their skin, living in the moment rather than living with all their past and everything that's happened to them in their lives, learning to live in the moment. Currently we have a volunteer coming in and doing that mindfulness program. And in conjunction with that, she uses Tai Chi as one of the methods that the inmates learn to use to cope with the stress and the anxiety of being traumatized as a mindfulness exercise. Why that's important to the jail? It reduces the number of altercations within the housing units. There's less fights in the housing units. People learn how to communicate with one another without, going off and getting angry and having assaults. We still have some, but it reduces the number of those.
Why am I part of it? I'm part of it to keep my mental health stable while I'm in here. The jail environment is very abrasive. It's very noisy. It's a very loud, cold, angry place to be. And it allows you to not react to it. It allows you a level of non-reaction that, it may be coming at you, but you don't have to respond because you're in a more peaceful place in your mind. And without this, I think I would come out much worse than I came in.
The state of Oregon provided us with a grant to establish a mental health mobile crisis team. These are folks who will be able to respond with law enforcement, but not exclusively. They can go to other situations, hopefully even before there's a need to call law enforcement, but to provide immediate mental health services in the field. We've never had the capacity to do that before. So initially we heard we're going to be staffed up 18 hours a day very soon, and hopefully it'll be around the clock, because that is what the state of Oregon is encouraging and really what we need to have in this county. But one more tool hopefully to keep a person from ending up in the emergency room or in the jail, but to get them immediate de-escalation help.
There was funds that came to a group of agencies that are putting this together, and the mental health office had a very difficult time hiring people and finding people that are willing to do mental health crisis work in the field with the officers. For a lot of therapists, that seems to be a very difficult move from doing therapy in the office to doing therapy out on the curb. And so they've had a really difficult time filling that position. I know the sheriff's office has thought about looking at maybe hiring those crisis counselors as part of the sheriff's office. That was considered with the levy that failed. That was just one of the things that we considered to try to keep the momentum of getting that, and so that we could use the grant money that we have. But as it is, we haven't been able to even use the grant money.
Yeah, and talking about the tax measure, and unfortunately it did go down. I'm disappointed. We obviously wanted to pass. We put a lot of work into it. I know that it have been very successful and given us the opportunity and the funding to really make a difference in the county. And it would have provided programs such as the pretrial release program. It would have provided an additional inmate counselor. It would also provide some things on the enforcement side of it to go back to 24/7 patrol coverage and add back another drug detective.
Well, we have all of them, and virtually all of them get to jail because we don't have adequate treatment in the community itself to help these folks. So they get pushed off on the jail, they get pushed off on the hospital, and the jail is really a revolving door. So when they're in jail, they're not getting the help they need. Everything is disrupted. Their family is disrupted, their work is disrupted. Many of the folks that suffer from mental health need robust treatment. You don't get robust treatment when you're in jail.
I think that more services is a huge part of it. And there's a fairly direct correlation between number of mental health providers available in the community and how many inmates you have at any given time. So the more mental health services, you tend to have fewer inmates. And even after adjusting for race, poverty, unemployment, and self-reported alcohol use. So I wanted to kind of capture some of those other elements that go into incarceration rates. But even after accounting for all of that, there's still this correlation with how many services are available, mental health providers in the community, and then what the inmate populations are in these county jails. And so I think that's a huge part of it, because even if you have a mobile crisis team or you have counselors, therapists, social workers on call to intervene in a crisis moment, you may or may not keep someone out of jail that day. But I think really we need to look even further upstream than that. So how do you prevent people from getting to that crisis moment? And if somebody doesn't have any other options, you know, they have nowhere to go on a day-to-day basis, there's a 6-week wait to even get in and see somebody, you're gonna end up with crisis moments, inevitably. And that kind of, you know, I think I don't have all the answers, but recruiting and retaining providers in these rural communities would be a huge part of that.
Any given time, we run about 30% that have some sort of mental illness, and that's not even considering the addictions. And you know, if we can reduce that number down to a manageable number, well, 0, you know, I don't even think they should be here. But there are some crimes that require people that still, even with mental illness, have to be in custody for protection of the community. But for the most part, these individuals are in custody on a low-level crime, and oftentimes they stay in jail much longer than anyone else would that was arrested on the same crime, because of additional tests and everything to make sure they're competent to stand trial in court that the judge has to impose. And so it's very sad to have to keep them, because we've watched them where they deteriorate in custody. And so, you know, as far as that culture, we really want to change the culture here so that we're not housing inmates with mental illness.
When I went to jail, you know, it was the first time I'd actually been clean of, you know, all drugs and alcohol, to be aware of what was going on, and that, you know, I needed help. So with all the lockdown, when I was in Lincoln County Jail, I just wanted to get out of my cell. So I went and just got on the kiosk, and I saw some programming available, and one was NA meeting, Narcotics Anonymous, they had Alcoholics Anonymous, and Breaking Barriers program. So I signed up for all of those, and I actually went to my first Narcotics Anonymous meeting while I was in Lincoln County Jail, and Breaking Barriers program was really key to helping me look at like my decision making and how that was what got me to where I was, and that I didn't have to do that anymore.
Well, I think in the context of mental health and recidivism, I think it's a huge issue when you have somebody in jail with mental health issues. Say, best case scenario, you get them on the medication they need, you get them stabilized, you give them support, and you release them back into the community. I'm not 100% sure what they're doing currently, but when I was working there in 2013, 2014, we would try to send people out the door with a month's worth of medication so that they had something to kind of hold them over. But we didn't have the staff to do like really in-depth discharge planning, or, you know, set up mental health appointments, check-ins, follow-up. They don't really have a position to do that. And, you know, the nurses and the counselor are pretty busy with everything else that's going on with those other 160 people. And so somebody who's discharged back out to wherever they came from with a limited supply of medication and no follow-up really, there's a pretty good chance you're going to see them again, unfortunately.
How do we fix that? I don't think there's a cheap answer to that. I think it is on the low. It's a personal. How do we fix the problem? Peer mentors, people with lived experience that have already jumped through the hoops, that can tell you, you know, when I had to jump through hoops, there were no clearly defined hoops. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know that I needed to have a credit score. I didn't know that I needed to, you know, to shave. Well, I don't shave now, but you know, all the things, the basic life skills of what do you wear to court if you have to go to court. How do you do an interview? I had to phone my friends, my mentors, the people that have gotten clean, they've moved forward their life, and they've gone through this regular life stuff that a lot of us people with mental health, with a poor upbringing, with substance use problems, those aren't just natural things that we know.
Where we go from here is, we really want to evaluate, I think it was, 44%, 45% it went down, or it didn't pass by. But the fact is that there's still a lot of components we may be still trying to do. We're not going to give up on the problem. I'm not going to say, well, the voters didn't pass it, so we're not going to do anything. That's not me at all. We still can look at how we can improve things, still moving forward. Maybe it's still just taking smaller chunks, going to the county budget and talking to the budget committee to see about how important it is. I've had a number of people come up to me, commissioners, the public, and talk about these are very important issues. We need to address them. And so maybe we don't look at it all at once. Maybe we just slowly build on what we're doing, still fill the gaps, identify the priorities. I still think that one of the main priorities is getting a pretrial release program in place so that we can basically determine who the right people are in jail. I think it would go to a lot to defer people with mental illness from coming to jail, and I think deferring people is what we want to try to do to get them the help they need.
Well, I think we have done a decent job of training ourselves at the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office. I know most of the patrol deputies have had at least 40 hours of training in crisis intervention, which helps because we're kind of on that front line. But, more mental health employees would be great. I mean, anything to help us keep them on the right path. These individuals that are in and out of jails or just on the street, just suffering from, whatever mental illness they're going through. Sorry, okay. But some people, it's not affecting their lives the same as someone that they haven't been treated in years. So it's hard to say exactly how many people are going to help. But I think for the most part, just more resources that's always going to be a good answer.
I've had someone in here who somebody who had significantly different considerations than other people. And I put her right beside me, and within 4 or 5 weeks, there was such a change that it was, I don't know how to explain how the change happened, but just to be treated with respect, to come in here for an hour and a half. And we all know that laughing, if you can laugh, if you can genuinely laugh, that changes the whole biochemical nature of your system. So the more that we can get a normalcy in here, a respect for their concerns. I reveal my stuff when we work on our things. I give them something where I've gone through very similar and still working at it, or these are the things that have helped me.
We have taken steps to put those resources back into the community so that if a person who commits a low-level crime and they have a mental illness and addiction, they can get into a pretrial relationship with the county so that we look at the treatment they need, we look at what services they need and the help they need, and we work with them. We work with them with peer-delivered services, we work with them with clinicians and physicians and all of that, but outside of the jail. If we can keep those kind of services and build up those kind of services in the community, that's where we reduce the recidivism in the jail. That's where we reduce the need for the emergency room, emergency services in the hospital. That's where we start to save lives because we're addressing the problem before it becomes an institutional problem.
I really enjoy that people watch me closely. People who know me when I was using and drinking and struggling with mental health, with depression, major depression, anxiety disorder. The people that see me now, they know who I was and they watch me really closely, and I'm excited to invite people into my life. I'm excited to share my experience, strength, and hope with them, because that carries a message that we do recover. Because anybody who knows Troy, the using Troy, the drinking Troy, knows that who I am today. They know it's true. They know it's real. They see me on a daily basis, and there's nothing more rewarding than being able to help somebody find hope. You know, because being hopeless is the most despair you can imagine.
We as a community, as a culture, have learned that we can't just lock everybody up. It's just not possible. We have to find a way to correct them so that they can become productive back in our community again. These people that are in jail are our brothers and our sisters and our aunts and uncles and sons and daughters. I mean, they're not, you know, they're part of our community. And, you know, we have a responsibility, I believe, that we have a responsibility as a culture to help them to correct. Not make them the same as everybody else, but help them to correct the problems in their lives so that they can feel that they're productive and, you know, contributing members of our society.